That's what you have to understand. The business model is about giving roles and responsibilities up to everybody else, other people, so that the pie is bigger for everybody. That's like a network effect. That's how you're going to drive exponential growth. That's why decentralized environments, I think you see the ones that succeed and have growth and the ones that don't are the ones that can have a bottom up, middle out kind of approach, right? That aren't trying to force everything to be top down, where like there's a bottleneck on the number of hours the decision makers have, and the way that the funding can reach different projects, this kind of stuff.
You need to have that accountability, right? You need to be able to catch yourself, right? So yeah, I screwed up here, right? So yeah, I screwed up. How do I go to where I can acknowledge this and still keep my integrity in the public's eye as well as personally, and keep going and be taken seriously? And so I think that's a very important part, right? And that's something important that you do for well, not basically for IOG, for everybody, for Charles, for everybody, to basically have that ability to kind of gauge, where, that equilibrium, right? I mean, that's that's what you call it, right? That equilibrium, accountability, being able to gauge, what to say, what not to say without being too censored. So yeah, it's an interesting.
There's a really easy way to explain it, which is like I draw the line for you, like I've explained to my team, right? We're here to help people observe and orientate, right? Well, I want to help you observe what's going on around you in the ecosystem, okay? So you get a view of all the points and orientate to whatever has the most value for you, right? We're not responsible for people's decisions and actions on a micro level. I don't know if Brian is going to do this or that, or what has the most value. And in fact, actually, in communities, people determine their own value, right? It's Brian making a decision to pursue his interests that get him involved, right? It's not me deciding for Brian, right? So we're not responsible for people's decisions and actions. But if you improve observation and orientation on the macro, you're going to get better outcomes, right? Because you're improving connectivity. And the whole business model of an ecosystem is about, creating roles and responsibilities that other people pick up. And for the ecosystem to really work, you have to understand the roles are interdependent, right? The success of this role depends on the success of these other roles. And like, you'll note that I'm not listing project names, right? Because you're not coming into an ecosystem, even if you're building it early on. If you start thinking project names, then it's about those specific people in that project's needs, right? Whereas like what I'm saying now, it's like the role, right? It's like, let's look at the roles that we've got in this ecosystem. How are they connecting? And are they understanding each other's needs, right? Because that's how you're going to make the engine turn. So really, I think that like relational capital and driving valuable, productive interactions is at the heart of the ecosystem. But just going back to community, you're looking around your product, right? And it's a feedback loop for product. It's a feedback loop for engineering. It's downstream of marketing because, marketing is getting that kind of attention, top of funnel. And, Brian, like if we were working together, I need to be downstream of that, making sure that you're getting good insight on whether that promise, people feel like the promise is being delivered, you know me, Dan. I will talk too much. So stop me at any point because I can talk about this day. That's what you have to understand. The business model is about giving roles and responsibilities up to everybody else, other people, so that the pie is bigger for everybody. That's like a network effect. That's how you're going to drive exponential growth. That's why decentralized environments, I think you see the ones that succeed and have growth and the ones that don't are the ones that can have a bottom up, middle out kind of approach, right? That aren't trying to force everything to be top down, where like there's a bottleneck on the number of hours the decision makers have, and the way that the funding can reach different projects, this kind of stuff. So it's really important that we all have like a EQ, right, as a group, a collective intelligence and understanding of what each other needs, because really our success depends on each other.
I think very, very well said, right? Like there's a lot to unpack there. I kind of want to ask you, how has that evolved? How has your your thoughts of community evolved over the years, right? Like that's your thoughts right now, but how has it evolved, and how do you see it evolving in the future, right? Like,
yeah, I started I started with market research. I originally started off as a chef, right? long time ago, and I got into like restaurant guides. So I suppose you start off thinking it's kind of like an audience, where you're kind of pushing a message and you're trying to get an outcome, which is different from my earlier explanation, where I understand that people have agency now and it's really up to them to decide what they want to do. But early on, you're thinking about, if I just land this message and hit Brian over the head with it hard enough, he'll definitely come around, right? I read books like Richard Millington is like a really great community. He doesn't do Web3, but he's like buzzing community. He has a whole bunch of books. That's really useful. But the community is about what's almost happening internally in the project, right? And you've got to have also an outward view of what that project's role is in its own community, which is effectively the ecosystem in which it sits, right? Because a lot of the work that you're doing is about connectivity, both within the people in the project, the community around it, right? Connecting to product, connecting to engineering, but also you want to work with other communities and be seen as a good player in the space as well, right? What else did I do? I mean, I think a big differentiator with me is like I would just buy tools, books, things like that to kind of read up on, and always kind of reaching out and building relationships with people and taking the time, even when there's not an immediate outcome at the end of it. Because like the hard thing to explain within a business when you're dealing with GMs, business units, this kind of stuff, right? You'll have very delivery focused people, and they'll be looking at like 3 months, 6 months ahead if you're lucky, right? Then you'll work with senior people, and they're looking at like 12 to 18 months, right? Like if it was a startup in an ecosystem or something, because they're looking at like a runway for the product market fit. And so community and relationships to them look like a cost center, right? Yeah, it's important, but like, is it really urgent for me right now? And so you have to be able to operate across some different time horizons. Where community managers really struggle to answer your question, to better answer your question, is they struggle on establishing ROI. They really struggle on saying, this is the value in the community and in the relationships that I'm nurturing for you. And community is always going to be seen as a reasonably junior role in any big organization. And look, listen, I don't believe it, but that is how it is. If you talk to product people, they think they should have a product first strategy. If you talk to engineers, it should be an engineering first strategy.
Yes.
So you talk to me, it should be community first, right? But I think the most important thing is to get across, like, if you're making long-term bets here, then you start breaking up into time horizons, helps you articulate the value to people on a long enough time horizon. In Web3, we can all agree that like ecosystems are a massive profit center, right? For the projects that build them, and for the roles and the projects that are in those ecosystems that get success, everybody's benefiting, I think what holds people back or makes those cogs rusty is, because I've come up all the way from the bottom up, right? I've had to, no one's listening to me or doing anything I say because I've got a job title, right? I've spent 7, 10, I don't know how many years it is. I work it out. It was like 2017, I got into blockchain, right? Just banging my head up against the wall in like technical environments where you're dealing with genius developers, right? So basically, the only influence I ever had was like soft influence, if I could bring my idea to you and persuade you. So I just kept failing for so long that eventually I kind of got a little bit better at it.